pick up a motorbike, there's hours and hours of information. Off-road skills, we do it the easiest way, by far the easiest way. So, the first thing is turn the bike off. We know what it's like when you're riding with your mates and you have a little topple, you want to run to your bike and pick it up and then ride away before they see you, take a photo or roost you. But you get two opportunities of picking up sometimes, by picking up here, and if it's still going, it goes off again. Because these bikes will run on a little bit. So, we've got it up on two wheels, we've turned the bike off. We're here. Like I say, we want to try and do it the easiest way possible. Because we're off-road orientated, you can't always choose where you crash. Sometimes you're on the side of a hill, a muddy rut, a puddle, a river crossing, whatever. So, this is the easiest way in the off-road world, in the off-road environment. So, we're going to get a solid platform to work with. What I mean by that is putting the bike, the steer into a lock. That gives us something solid to pick up. The furthest point of the motorbike is the handlebar, and we're going to use that as leverage. I'm not going to go into manual handling, I'm just going to stand shoulder width apart sort of thing, pointing in the direction of the front wheel. That's facing up to the sky, I'm facing in the same direction. I'm going to hold with two hands at the furthest point of the handlebar. I'm then going to, as I take the strain, I'm going to walk forward into the bike. Go on, Jenny. Just like that. So, walking forward takes away that point of if you stand there and just try to lift, there's going to be a certain point where you're just lifting with your arms. By walking forward, you end up using the strongest part of your biggest muscles is your legs. So we can pick it up like that. Chris, what's next?
Beautiful, we made that look easy, guys. Now, dropping bikes is kind of inevitable. It happens sooner or later, but we're going to try not to. A couple of little techniques we teach are about being a bit more confident around the balance of the bike, around the weight of the bike, and a few exercises that are really good to do on your own bikes at home.
Yeah, listen, we're not very imaginative. Walking around the bike. Now, we see it so many times when you've got to walk around the bike. People hug it. People hold it tight and want to walk around it. Actually, you're going to be fighting the balance of the bike and the balance of your body. And if it does go, when you're close to it, you're going to go with it. If it goes the other way, you haven't got quite enough room to save it. By stepping away from the bike, having it to a lock, again, there's something solid to hold on to. And actually, up on two wheels, they don't weigh anything. You can hold it with one finger. If it falls to you, you can save it. If it falls the other way, you can use your body to counteract it. But actually, yeah, having a little walk around your bike, maybe hold it where you've never held it before. I'm sure nobody stood at the front holding it by his indicators.
One of the little tips as well, this is useful. If you're in your local bike shop trying to negotiate a deal on the bike and you're holding it by the indicator looking the other way, you've got the salesman's full attention to that point. So always a nice little wrangling tactic that I'll use. Now, Neil's just before we get to riding these bikes, one of the things we talk a little bit about is walking with the bike. Sometimes you end up in a difficult situation, someone's boxed you in a car park, can't quite get your leg over the bike to get on it. And off-road, well, often it can happen where you've got a log to climb over, there's a rut in the trail you don't want to ride. Some of our trips, we go to Iceland, we go to Portugal, some of our trips have got big water crossings on. And again, being able to walk the bike out of the situation is really useful. It just takes a little bit of the risk out.
But walking is safe, but it's, we've got a motorbike, Chris, can I ride it yet?
Go on, Neil, jump on that bike. So the first most important thing you'll notice about off-road riding is people ride stood up. Riding stand up has a number of advantages, but getting a good standing position is the difference between being able to ride off-road confidently and waiting for a crash to happen. So Neil, talk us through the standing position.
Yeah, the standing position is very, very important. It's something you can get slightly wrong and can affect a lot about how you ride the bike, especially when we're off-road. You can see when we're turning, we use a lot of foot peg pressure. So we're not so using the handlebars so much, it's all going through the feet, through the foot pegs, being able to turn, move the bike around. And also, it's a bit about the suspension. The suspension on these GS is absolutely amazing, but with our legs, combined with our arms, we can really move around these bikes.
So moving on from riding in a sort of straight line, we get everyone comfortable with our standing position. We then start to tighten things up a bit. Do a few tighter turns, some slaloms, some full up U-turns. Neil, talk us through how we're going to do a tight turn on these bikes.
Again, we're not very imaginative with our exercise names. This is what we call circle in a square. So we're going to try and do as tight as we can circle in a small amount of space we can. Now the way to do this, at slow speed, we want to lean the bike in. The more we lean the bike, the tighter we can turn. So by putting pressure on the outside of the bike, we can then lean it even further. I've got a lot of weight I can weight the foot pegs with, so I can turn quite tight. The more weight you can put on, the tighter you can turn. It's an advantage of being a bit of a fatty.
So, once we've got everyone confident turning these bikes in a tight space, we're going to start working on a few of the other controls, work on a bit of clutch control, work on a bit of throttle control. Now we're going to start talking about the brakes. Now the bikes we've got on the school, we have a fleet of, don't squash me Jenny, we've got a fleet of GSs down in South Wales. So we've got the 1250 GS as you see here, we've got a few of the 850 GSs, the 750 GS and the little G310 GS as well. Now the 1250s, when we're using them, they've got a really advanced off-road ABS system, but it's sometimes good to know what's going to happen when you do overstep the mark. So we do one of our exercises locking the rear wheel, and then one is pushing the front brake to its limit until you get the ABS to kick in.
Yeah, the back brake one is really interesting. It's not your tires, you don't have to worry about it. It's just to get a feel of what the bike can do under a ski. And it shows you how rubbish the back brake is on its own. Now, to get to the next level of off-road riding, you've got to be really confident of using your front brake. That's where it all happens. We're hearing a lot more people come and say, oh, don't use the front, it will make you crash. Well, it doesn't. If you're really good on the front brake, you can get really confident. And it's all about the squeezing and the progressive feel of the brake. So we turn the ABS off, or put it in Euro Pro, and we start driving and trying to lock the front. Basically, we're doing a rolling burnout. So we're not telling you how to do a rolling burnout, but that might be the first step.
So moving on from the braking exercises, we've got, say, a 4,000 acre site, so we move out into the park, start riding around the trails a little bit. One of our next exercises we talk about is downhills, how to ride a bike down the hill safely. The good thing about our site is we've got everything from the gentlest, easiest slopes possible to terrifying cliffs. We try and stay away from them as much as possible, but we can always build up the progression, so you're never thrown into something you're not comfortable with. Always try and build it up a little bit at a time.
Yeah, like Chris said, we can ramp it up as we see fit. But the first sort of technique would be to engine braking only. That's no brakes, no clutch, it's just using the compression of the engine to slow us down. That's a really good technique on a nice and gentle hill. But then the next technique would be the clutch still out with a little bit of brakes. So engine braking with a little bit of brakes. That's as the hill gets a little bit harder, a little bit steeper, you might want to start to adopt that technique. And then the next one is when you really don't like the hill, the clutch can come in and you can just go down on the brakes, pick your line, pick your way down the hill.
Once we're finished with downhills, obviously, we've got to go uphill again afterwards. And we always like to start the uphill riding lesson with a failure, with what happens when it goes wrong. Because people are always worried about getting halfway up a hill, being stopped on the hill and not knowing how to get going, not knowing how to turn around. So one of the things we teach is a hill recovery, how to stop on a hill, turn the bike round, and get back down again safely.
Yeah, it's better to... I'm stuck, Chris. So it's better to learn how to get out of a problem efficiently than just go in for hills straight away. So that here you see I'm not on the brakes, the clutch is out and it holds me quite nicely. It might get back on the compression a little bit, but we're pretty sturdy. On a nice long hill, you're pretty safe into this position now once the clutch is out. From here we're going to get off the bike. So turn the bars, gives us loads of room and it leads the bike into the foothold we've got down on the floor. We're going to come off the bike, and what we're going to do is bring the bike around us so we can get it out of the way and have another go at the hill. So the bars turn, and we're going to come back nice and slowly on the clutch. We're going to use the clutch, not really on the brakes. The smoother and slower we can go, the more calm it is. We're not in a race. If you start rushing it, everything goes really quick. You don't want that. So nice and smooth, you can bring yourself round, and then once you're on the side of the hill where you know you can ride out, back on, straight to that foot peg, and off you go.
It's interesting to watch the techniques here because Neil obviously is quite a big, strong guy. If the bike goes off balance, he can catch it pretty easily. Jenny doesn't have that safety net. Jenny has to get everything right. But it's proof that you don't need to be super strong and super confident. You just need a little bit of skill, a little bit of technique and knowing how to use it, and you can get these bikes out of some incredible situations. So obviously the aim is to make it up the hill. We're going to use a little exercise now, which is our momentum exercise, which is using the momentum of the bike to carry it up the hill. So rather than getting onto the slippery muddy slope, then opening the throttle, the rear wheel spins and we go back to hill recovery, we're going to drive along the flat, get some momentum, get some speed up, and then that is what carries the bike up the slope.
Yeah, that's exactly what Chris said. I'm going to, as soon as I'm in the straight line, I'll drive up under control. Because you want to get up to the top of the hill, knowing what you're going to do next. Whether that's a left turn, a right turn, or there's a drop, you have to stop. So it's pointless going like a motocrosser and driving up the hill, and then having to work out what you're going to do next. It's all got to be under control. We do a lot of this.
Okay, Neil, so just to hammer the point home about the fact that we're not using the throttle on the hill this time, Neil, I want you to drive across the flat, get momentum, and I want you to switch the engine off. Just to put the point home that we're not using the engine to get up the hill, we're using momentum.
Is that okay?
I'm hoping one day in the 10 days we can catch you out over here. So that's all the lessons of our level 1 course, and we try and get everyone in through that, get those basic skills worked on. We always split up into groups so you're with similar abilities, and then you can progress throughout the day. Moving on from level 1, we start getting to the more exciting bits of riding, the skids, the slides, the spin turns and the power slides. So Neil, give us a little run through, first of all, spin turns and power slides.
Yeah, spin turns is pretty fun. We can, it's a really good way to really impress your mates or fail dramatically. You can do it on the bike or off the bike. It's not much safer to do off the bike. The thing is, lean the bike, turn the bike where you want to go, turn that leading foot the way you want to go as well. Look with your head and shoulders, and a little bit of drive, a bit of clutch. You've got to get the bike spinning, but then hold on the clutch. So a little bit of drive, and the bike comes around nicely. Do that off the bike, and it's exactly the same on the bike. Foot comes down, head and shoulders move, the foot that's leading has to turn, and a bit of drive, and it'll come around nicely.
Once we get you into this idea of being able to use the throttle, spin the bike in a tight space, we want to be able to power slide the bike. Now I can make all sorts of excuses for why we do power slides. It's about foot peg control. Really, it's awesome fun and it looks cool. So Neil, show us a few brake slides and power slides.
So the first thing about power sliding is actually the skid. Now, Chris, can you stand on here for me? We've got 10 days. I don't want to damage him on the first day. It's about getting really good with that back wheel skid and being accurate, because you want to skid so the bike and yourself's under control.
Be nice.
So you've got to be really accurate with it. Oh, that was way too far. Let me do it again. So once you get the skid and the feel for the skid, then you can start doing the power slide on the way out as well. Woohoo!
He's being kind. So again, as with everything off-road skills, we don't just chuck you into the deep end and say, give it a big handful of throttle, see what happens. We like to build these skills up, build up the skills to learn to do the skid, learn to control it, and then build it into a power slide. And it's amazing what you can do on these bikes. Neil's going to have a little whiz round now with a pillion. With a pillion. So one of the courses we do, as well as our riding course, we do an adventure travel training course. And this is about a few things that you might need on a trip or an adventure throughout the world. It could be strapping a bike down into a van or a raft, how to tow another bike, how to ride with a broken clutch lever, how to get down a hill that you can't actually ride down. And as well as our only course we do where we get you to bring your pillion along. You can learn to ride off-road with a pillion, both sat down, and then you can move into riding with two of you stood up on the foot pegs, which means you can tackle fire roads.
So here, once we're stood up, Now, it's really important to get close with the pillion. I've got to be able to move around the bike still. The pillion kind of stays where they are. It's about getting a little bit confident with just moving the bike. But it's amazing where you can go, where you can ride, two up, off-road, yeah, and it makes your adventure a bit more fun, isn't it, joining with someone else?
We want to see it later when Neil goes on the back of Jenny. That's a much more interesting video. We'll get to that one. So Jenny's going to jump off now. As well as the adventure travel training courses, off-road skills, we do a load of riding holidays and trips. So once you've done one of our courses, you kind of open the doors up to come and ride. On some of our trips we do Portugal, we do Australia, we do Iceland, and we do a bunch of riding holidays in Wales as well. We can teach you to do all this stuff to come and see us in South Wales. I'm going to leave Neil off the leash for a little bit of a spin. Our next demonstration will be at 1 o'clock with the rider training, guys. Can I have a big round of applause, guys, for Neil Hawker and Jenny Huntley.
Thanks, guys. Come and join us in Wales soon.
Okay? Yeah, good, Jim. You alright? Good. Good?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, good. Okay, Dave, you enjoy that?